The distant wail of a coyote echoed across the moonlit prairie as Yates Forrester stood on the weathered porch of his ranch house, watching the horizon with tired eyes that had seen too much of life for his 28 years. The year was 1878, and the Montana Territory was still wild enough to swallow a manhole if he wasn't careful. But it wasn't the dangers of the frontier that kept Yates awake these nights. It was the 4-year-old girl sleeping inside, a child who had come into his life like a whirlwind 6 months ago and turned everything upside down. When his sister died in childbirth back east, leaving her daughter Emma without any living relatives except for him, Yates had done the only thing he could: brought the child west to his struggling cattle ranch. He knew nothing about raising a little girl, but he'd been doing his best, though some days he wondered if his best was good enough. His thoughts scattered as he caught sight of movement along the road leading to his property. A wagon, moving slowly in the dim light of dusk, approached his homestead. Visitors were rare out here, 15 miles from the nearest town of Silverdale. Yates stepped off the porch, hand instinctively moving to rest on the handle of his Colt revolver. As the wagon drew closer, he could make out a woman at the reins, her figure slumped with exhaustion. The horse pulling the wagon looked nearly spent, its head hanging low. Yates whistled for his ranch hand, Miguel, who emerged from the bunkhouse with a lantern. "Looks like trouble," Miguel said, lifting the light to better see the approaching visitor. "Keep an eye on Emma," Yates instructed, already striding toward the incoming wagon. "I'll see what this is about." The woman pulled the wagon to a stop, her hands trembling visibly on the reins. In the fading light, Yates could see she was young, perhaps 22 or 23, with hair the color of wheat caught in a messy braid. Her clothes were travel-stained, and even in the dim light he could see bruising on her face. "Madam," Yates called, approaching cautiously. "Are you all right?" She looked up, and her eyes blue as the Montana sky were filled with a mixture of exhaustion and fear. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm looking for work. In town, they said Forrester Ranch might need help." Yates frowned. He wasn't hiring, especially not a woman who looked like she might collapse at any moment, but something about her desperate expressions stopped him from turning her away immediately. "What's your name?" he asked, reaching up to help her down from the wagon. "Brielle Summers," she replied, wincing as her feet touched the ground. "I can cook, clean, and I'm good with children. I'll work hard, Mr. Forrester." "How do you know my name?" he asked, suspicion edging into his voice. "Everyone in Silverdale knows about the rancher raising his sister's little girl alone," she said, then swayed dangerously on her feet. Yates caught her elbow to steady her. "Miss Summers, you're in no condition to be discussing employment. Let's get you inside and tended to first." He looked over his shoulder at Miguel. "Tend to her horse and wagon, would you?" Miguel nodded, taking the reins while Yates guided the woman toward the house. As they approached, the front door creaked open and a small figure in a white nightgown appeared, Uncle Yates. Emma's sleepy voice carried in the still night air. "Who's that lady?" "This is Miss Summers," Yates said, helping Brielle up the porch steps. "She's going to stay with us tonight." Emma's eyes widened as she looked at Brielle's bruised face. "Are you hurt, miss?" "Uncle Yates is real good at making people feel better. He fixed my knee when I fell off the porch." Despite her obvious pain, Brielle managed a small smile for the child. "I'm just tired from my journey, little one." Yates ushered them all inside the modest ranch house. It wasn't much a main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, 2 bedrooms, and the loft where Emma slept, but it was clean and solid. He guided Brielle to a chair near the fire. "Emma, fetch a clean cloth and the water basin," he instructed, and the little girl scampered off, eager to help while Emma was busy. Yates leaned closer to Brielle and asked in a low voice, "Who did this to you?" She stiffened, her gaze dropping to her lap. "It doesn't matter now." "I'm far away from him." "Husband?" Yates asked, his jaw tightening. Brielle shook her head. "Almost. Thomas Blackburn. He owns half of Durand County to the east. We were engaged, but She trailed off as Emma returned with the cloth and basin. "Here you go, Uncle Yates." Emma announced proudly, carefully setting down the basin without spilling too much water. "Thank you, sweetheart," Yates said, taking the cloth and dipping it in the cool water. With unexpected gentleness for his rough, calloused hands, he cleaned the dirt from Brielle's face, taking care around the bruises. "You're running from him," Yates stated rather than asked once Emma had climbed onto the sofa and was watching them with curious eyes. Brielle nodded slightly. "He won't let me go easily. He considers me his property." Yates's expression hardened, but he kept his touch gentle as he finished cleaning her face. "Well, you're on Forrester land now, and no man takes what doesn't belong to him here," Emma piped up. "Are you going to stay, Miss Summers?" "I hope you do. Uncle Yates burns breakfast sometimes, and we don't have any ladies here." Yates gave his niece a mock stern look. "I thought you liked my flapjacks." "I like them when they're not black," Emma replied earnestly, causing Brielle to laugh despite her condition. The sound of that laugh seemed to surprise all of them, especially Brielle herself. She covered her mouth quickly, as if afraid of the sound. "You have a nice laugh," Emma said, sliding off the sofa to stand beside Brielle. "I like it." Yates watched the interaction with an unreadable expression. "Emma's right about one thing: we could use some help around here, but not tonight. Tonight you rest. We can talk about work tomorrow." "I can't pay for lodging," Brielle said quickly. "I didn't bring much with me." "I'm not asking for payment," Yates replied. "Just get some rest." "You can take my room tonight and I'll sleep out here." But Brielle began to protest. "No arguments," Yates cut her off, but his voice was kind. "Emma, show Miss Summers to my room, please." Emma took Brielle's hand. "Come on, Miss Summers. Uncle Yates has a real big bed and the quilt is soft." As Emma led Brielle away, Yates caught the wary look in the woman's eyes, the look of someone who had learned the hard way that kindness often came with a price. He wanted to tell her she was safe here, but he knew words meant little to someone who had been betrayed by them before. Only time and actions would prove his intentions. Later, after both Emma and Brielle were settled, Yates sat by the fire cleaning his rifle. Miguel knocked softly and entered the house. "The horse is fed and watered," Miguel reported. "Not a good animal, but it brought her this far." "Thanks," Yates said, continuing to work the cleaning rod through the barrel of his Winchester. "The woman," Miguel began cautiously. "She's in trouble, isn't she?" Yates nodded. "Looks that way." "What are you going to do?" Yates set the rifle aside and looked at his friend. Miguel had worked for him for 3 years, ever since Yates had found him half dead along a trail after a bandit attack. They'd built a trust that went beyond employer and employee. "I don't know yet," Yates admitted, "but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not sending her back to whoever did that to her face." Miguel nodded his approval. "Emma seems to like her." "Emma likes everyone," Yates replied with a small smile, "but we do need help with her. I can't keep dragging her along while I work the ranch, and you've got your hands full with the cattle. So she stays. For now," Yates confirmed. "At least until she's healed up and we figure out how serious this trouble following her might be." Miguel didn't look convinced. "A man who would do that to a woman's face will not simply let her go, patron." "I know," Yates said, his voice hardening. "And when he comes, he'll find more than he bargained for." The next morning, Yates awoke at dawn, his back stiff from spending the night on the too small sofa. The smell of coffee and cooking food filled the house. For a moment, he was disoriented, wondering if he was dreaming. Then he remembered Brielle Summers. He rose and found her in the kitchen area, a borrowed apron tied around her waist as she expertly flipped flapjacks in his cast iron skillet. Emma sat at the table, chattering away as she helped set out plates and utensils that were usually just left in a pile. "And then the mountain lion jumped right over Uncle Yates's head," Emma was saying, clearly in the middle of a tale that grew with each telling. "Is that so?" Brielle responded, her voice warm with amusement. "Your uncle must be very brave." "It was a bobcat," Yates corrected as he entered, "and it didn't jump over my head. It ran up a tree when it saw me." Emma pouted. "You always spoil the good parts." "Good morning, Mr. Forrester," Brielle said, her tone becoming more formal in his presence. The morning light through the windows revealed her bruises more clearly, a palette of purple and yellow across her left cheek and eye. "Yates," he corrected. "Just Yates. Nobody calls me Mr. Forrester except the bank manager when he's fixing to deliver bad news." He poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot on the stove. "You didn't have to cook." "I wanted to," she said, sliding a perfectly golden flapjack onto a growing stack. "To thank you for your hospitality." Miss Brielle makes flapjacks way better than yours, Emma announced, reaching for the syrup. Hers aren't black at all, is that right? Yates couldn't help smiling at his niece's honesty. Well, maybe I should hire Miss Summers just to save us from my cooking. He meant it as a joke, but the hope that flared in Brielle's eyes made it clear she took his words seriously. I would be grateful for any position, she said quickly. I'm a hard worker, and I can learn whatever tasks you need done. Yates sat down at the table, studying her over the rim of his coffee cup. In the daylight, she was even prettier than he'd thought last night, despite the bruising. Her eyes were indeed the color of the summer sky, and her hair, now neatly braided, caught the sunlight like ripe wheat. She moved with an inherent grace that seemed at odds with her current circumstances. I can't pay much, he said finally. The ranch makes enough to keep us going, but cattle prices have been down. Room and board and a small wage is all I ask, she replied, bringing the platter of flapjacks to the table. And she hesitated, glancing at Emma, who was happily drowning her breakfast in syrup. And safety. That I can provide, Yates said firmly. No one will harm you here, Miss Summers. You have my word. She held his gaze for a moment, as if searching for the truth in his eyes. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded slightly before taking a seat. Emma needs looking after, Yates continued. I've been trying to teach her reading and figures, but I'm not much of a teacher. The house needs tending, and come roundup time, the hands will need feeding. It's not easy work. I'm not afraid of hard work, Brielle said, passing him the syrup. And I was a teacher back east before. She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. I can certainly help Emma with her studies. A teacher, Emma perked up. Can you teach me lots of things? Uncle Yates only knows how to count cows and shoot straight. Yates chuckled. I know a bit more than that, Squirt. Well, you never told me about the presidents or geography or fractions, Emma countered. Because I was saving those exciting topics for your new teacher, Yates replied smoothly, winking at Brielle, who couldn't suppress a small smile. After breakfast, Yates took Brielle on a tour of the ranch while Emma trailed behind, adding her own commentary. The main house was modest but sturdy, built by Yates's own hands when he'd claimed the land 5 years earlier. A small bunkhouse housed Miguel and occasionally a couple of seasonal hands during busier times. The barn, corral, and a few outbuildings completed the ranch's central buildings, with grazing land stretching for miles beyond. It's not much compared to some spreads, Yates admitted as they stood looking out over his land, but it's paid for and it's mine. It's beautiful, Brielle said sincerely. Peaceful, I've never lived anywhere so open before. Emma tugged at Brielle's skirt. Want to see my secret hideout? It's in the barn loft, and Uncle Yates says it's the best fort in all of Montana territory. After your lessons, Yates interjected, if Miss Summers is going to be your teacher, you need to show her you can be a good student. Emma's face fell momentarily, but she nodded. Yes, sir. Can we start lessons today, Miss Brielle? I don't see why not, Brielle replied, touched by the child's enthusiasm. Do you have any books? A few, Yates said. Bible, some Shakespeare, a couple of dime novels I hide from Emma. He smiled at his niece's indignant expression. And Emma's mother left some proper books for children. They're in a trunk. I'll show you. As they walked back to the house, Miguel rode in from checking the western fence line. He tipped his hat to Brielle. Señorita, you are feeling better today. Yes, thank you, Brielle replied. I appreciate your help with my horse last night. Miguel dismounted, leading his horse toward the barn. That animal needs rest and good feed. Another day on the trail would have finished him. Miss Brielle's staying, Emma announced excitedly. She's going to be my teacher and help around the ranch. Miguel looked at Yates, who nodded confirmation. Good, Miguel said simply. We need a woman's touch around here. And someone who can cook, Emma added seriously. Emma, Yates admonished, but Brielle laughed. It's all right, she said. I'm happy to be useful in any way I can. They spent the rest of the morning setting up a small area of the main room as a schoolroom of sorts, with an old table serving as a desk. Yates brought out the trunk of books that had belonged to his sister, and Brielle examined them with genuine pleasure. These are excellent, she said, running her fingers over the spine of a well-loved copy of Robinson Crusoe. Your sister had wonderful taste in literature. Claire loved books, Yates said, a shadow crossing his face at the mention of his sister. She always said she wanted Emma to grow up loving stories as much as she did. I will, Emma promised solemnly. I'm going to read all of Mama's books when I'm big enough. Brielle met Yates's eyes over Emma's head, and a moment of understanding passed between them. Whatever happened, they would honor that wish. That afternoon, while Emma had her first formal lesson with Brielle, Yates rode out with Miguel to check on a section of the herd. As they rode, he couldn't help glancing back toward the ranch house, visible in the distance. "You're worried about them?" Miguel asked. "Just thinking," Yates replied. "It's a big change having her here." "For the better, I think," Miguel observed. "The little one needs a woman's guidance." "And you?" He trailed off, giving Yates a knowing look. "Don't start," Yates warned. "Miss Summers is here for Emma and to escape whatever trouble she's in. That's all." Miguel shrugged. "If you say so, patron, but I have eyes. She is bonita, no, and kind to Emma." Yates couldn't deny either of those observations, but he kept his thoughts to himself as they rode on to check the cattle. The woman had enough problems without him adding to them with unwanted attention. Besides, he had learned long ago that getting too attached to people only led to pain when they inevitably left. Days turned into weeks, and Brielle settled into life at Forrester Ranch as if she had always been there. Her bruises faded, and with them, some of her wariness. Emma thrived under her attention, making remarkable progress in her studies and blossoming in the presence of a maternal figure. The house, which had always been clean but sparse, began to show small touches of Brielle's presence: wildflowers in jars on the table, curtains she'd sewn from fabric ordered from the general store, meals that made mealtime something to look forward to rather than just a necessity. Yates found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, the way she hummed quietly as she worked, how she listened with complete attention when Emma spoke, the gentle way she handled everything as if it were precious. He told himself it was just appreciation for how she'd improved life for Emma, but deep down, he knew it was more. One evening in late August, nearly 2 months after Brielle's arrival, Yates sat on the porch after supper, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. Emma was already asleep, worn out from a day of helping Miguel with the chickens, and Brielle had just finished washing the dishes. She stepped onto the porch, hesitating when she saw him. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude on your solitude." "You're not intruding," he said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. "Sit if you'd like." Brielle settled into the chair, her hands folded in her lap. For a while they sat in companionable silence, watching as the setting sun painted the prairie in shades of gold and purple. "It's so beautiful here," she said finally. "Sometimes I can't believe places like this exist." "Where did you grow up?" Yates asked, realizing he knew little about her life before she arrived at his ranch. "Philadelphia," she replied. "My father was a banker. When he and my mother died of influenza 5 years ago, I had to make my own way. I became a teacher, but then..." She paused, and Yates saw her hands tighten in her lap. "Then I met Thomas. He was visiting from the West, looking for investment opportunities. He was charming, attentive. When he proposed and asked me to come west with him, I thought it was the answer to my prayers." Yates waited, giving her space to continue or stop as she chose. "It wasn't until we arrived at his ranch in Durand County that I saw who he really was," she continued quietly. "He was cruel to his workers, to his horses, to anyone he considered beneath him, and he had a temper." Her hand drifted unconsciously to her cheek, where the bruises had faded but the memory clearly hadn't. "When I tried to break off our engagement, She shook her head. "He said no one leaves Thomas Blackburn, especially not a woman with no family and no means." "So you ran," Yates said, not a question but a statement of understanding. Brielle nodded. "I took a horse and wagon while he was away on business and just left. I had a little money saved, and I knew I had to get far enough away that he wouldn't find me easily. I traveled west for 2 weeks before I reached Silverdale, and ended up here," Yates finished. "Yes," she looked at him directly. "I never properly thanked you, Yates. You took in a stranger, gave me shelter, a purpose. You and Emma," she smiled softly. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever." "What's that?" he asked. "Hope," she said simply. The word hung between them in the gathering twilight. Yates felt a tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with the cooling air and everything to do with the woman beside him. "You've given us something too," he said after a moment. "Emma needs you. She's different since you came, happier, more settled." "And you?" Brielle asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What have I given you, Yates Forrester?" The question caught him off guard with its directness. He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the gentle curve of her jaw, the way her eyes reflected the fading light, the strand of golden hair that had escaped her braid to dance against her cheek in the evening breeze. "Peace," he said finally, the word feeling inadequate for what he truly meant. "You've made this place feel like a home again." Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a recognition. She reached out, hesitant at first, and laid her hand over his where it rested on the arm of his chair. Her touch was light but unmistakably intentional. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me a home when I needed one most." Before he could respond, the sound of approaching hoofbeats broke the moment. They both turned to see Miguel riding hard toward the house, his expression grim in the fading light. Yates stood immediately, sensing trouble. "Riders coming," Miguel called out as he reined in his horse. "6 men, armed, asking about a blonde woman at the Wilkins place down the valley. They're heading this way." Brielle went pale, her hand flying to her mouth. "Thomas," she whispered. "He's found me." Yates's jaw tightened. "Get inside," he told her. "Stay with Emma." He turned to Miguel. "How far out?" "Half hour, maybe less," Miguel replied, dismounting. "They were watering their horses at the creek when I spotted them." Yates nodded, his mind already forming a plan. "Get the rifles from the barn. I'll meet you back here." As Miguel hurried off, Yates turned to find Brielle still standing frozen on the porch. "Brielle," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I need you to go inside now." "This is my fight," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I won't let you risk your life, your ranch, because of me." Yates took her by the shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. "Listen to me. You are not alone in this. Not anymore. Now go inside, lock the door, and stay with Emma. If anything happens to me or Miguel, take Emma and go out the back window. The bay mare in the corral is fast and sure-footed. Head for Sheriff Callahan in Silverdale." "Yates," she began, but he shook his head. "Promise me you'll protect Emma if things go bad," he insisted. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I promise. But please, be careful." On impulse, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek before hurrying inside. The touch of her lips lingered on his skin as he heard the lock slide into place behind her. Miguel returned with the rifles and additional ammunition. They positioned themselves strategically, Yates on the porch with a clear view of the approach road, Miguel concealed near the barn where he could provide covering fire if needed. "We don't shoot first," Yates instructed. "But we don't hesitate if they draw." The wait seemed interminable, but finally, the sound of horses approaching broke the tense silence. 6 riders appeared, moving at a steady pace toward the ranch house. In the lead was a man Yates immediately disliked on sight, tall, expensively dressed, with the arrogant bearing of someone used to getting his way. Yates stepped forward, rifle held casually but ready. "Evening, gentlemen. You're a long way from anywhere. Can I help you with something?" The lead rider, Thomas Blackburn, Yates presumed pulled his horse to a stop and surveyed the ranch with disdain before fixing his gaze on Yates. "I'm looking for a woman," he said without preamble. "Blonde, pretty, answers to Brielle. She's my fiancé and she's confused. Ran off a while back." "That's so," Yates kept his voice neutral. "And why would she run from a fine gentleman like yourself?" A flicker of anger crossed Blackburn's face. "That's a private matter between me and my intended. Have you seen her or not?" "Might help if I knew who was asking," Yates replied. The man straightened in his saddle. "Thomas Blackburn of Durand County. I own the largest cattle operation east of here." "Well, Mr. Blackburn of Durand County," Yates said, "I'm Yates Forrester and this is my land. I don't know anything about your personal troubles, but I do know this: no one comes onto my property making demands." Blackburn's expression hardened. "I have reason to believe my fiancé is here and I'm taking her home." "And if she doesn't want to go?" Yates asked. "She doesn't have a choice," Blackburn replied coldly. "She belongs to me." Yates felt a surge of anger but kept his expression calm. "No person belongs to another, Blackburn. Not here, not anywhere." I don't have time for philosophical debates with a dirt farmer, Blackburn snapped. He turned to his men. Search the house. 2 riders started to dismount, but Yates raised his rifle. Take one more step toward my house and it'll be your last. The men froze, looking to Blackburn for direction. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. You're making a mistake, Blackburn said, his hand moving toward his sidearm. There are 6 of us and only one of you. 2, came Miguel's voice as he stepped into view, his rifle trained steadily on the group of riders. And we're on home ground. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Blackburn's lips twisted into an ugly smile. All this for a woman who isn't worth the trouble, he said. Fine, keep her, but know this: she's damaged goods. Used, I've had her in every way a man can have a woman. Yates's finger tightened on the trigger, but he held himself in check. She's worth more than you'll ever understand, he said evenly. Now get off my land. Blackburn stared at him with naked hatred. This isn't over, Forrester. For tonight it is, Yates replied. Next time you come here uninvited, I won't be so hospitable. With a curt gesture to his men, Blackburn turned his horse. Let's go. We'll settle this another day. Yates and Miguel kept their rifles raised until the riders disappeared into the gathering darkness. Only then did Yates lower his weapon, letting out a slow breath. They will be back, Patron, Miguel said quietly. I know, Yates agreed. But not tonight, and next time we'll be better prepared. He strode to the house and knocked on the door. Brielle, it's me, they're gone. The door opened immediately, revealing Brielle with Emma clutched tightly against her side. The child's eyes were wide with fear. Are the bad men gone, Uncle Yates? Emma asked tremulously. Yes, Squirt, they're gone, Yates assured her, setting his rifle aside and kneeling to her level. And we're all fine. Emma looked up at Brielle. Were they looking for you, Miss Brielle? Brielle hesitated, then nodded. Yes, Emma, I'm afraid they were. Was it the man who hurt you? Emma asked perceptively. Emma, Yates began, but Brielle touched his shoulder. It's all right, she told him before addressing Emma. Yes, it was, but your uncle made him leave. Emma considered this, then declared with absolute certainty, then you need to stay here with us forever, where Uncle Yates can protect you. Brielle's eyes filled with tears as she looked from Emma to Yates. Oh, Emma, I don't know if that's possible. Why not? Emma demanded. Don't you like us? Of course I do, Brielle said, kneeling beside Yates to be at Emma's level. I love being here with you both. Then stay, Emma insisted. Can she stay forever, Uncle Yates? Yates looked at Brielle, at the hope and fear warring in her eyes, at the way she'd already woven herself into the fabric of their lives. He thought about the empty ranch before her arrival and how full of life it had become since. I sure hope so, he answered softly, his eyes never leaving Brielle's. I sure hope so. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning beyond what Emma could understand. Brielle's breath caught, and for a moment the rest of the world seemed to fade away. But the moment was broken when Miguel appeared at the door. Patron, we should prepare. They may return. The next few days passed in a state of heightened vigilance. Yates sent word to Sheriff Callahan in Silverdale about Blackburn's visit, and the sheriff promised to keep an eye out, though his jurisdiction didn't extend far enough to offer much protection at the ranch itself. Yates and Miguel took turns standing watch, never leaving the ranch unguarded. Emma was kept close to the house, her usual freedom to roam curtailed for her safety. Despite the tension, life continued. Cattle needed tending, meals needed cooking, and Emma's education couldn't be neglected. Brielle seemed to withdraw into herself, racked with guilt over bringing danger to the ranch. One evening, after Emma was asleep, Yates found her packing her meager belongings in the small room that had become hers. "What are you doing?" he asked from the doorway. She startled, then resumed folding a dress. "What I should have done as soon as Blackburn found me. I'm leaving." "Where will you go?" "Further west," she said, not meeting his eyes. "California, maybe, somewhere he won't follow." "He'll follow," Yates said quietly. "Men like him don't give up easily." "Then at least he won't be a danger to you and Emma anymore," she replied, her voice breaking. "I can't bear the thought of either of you being hurt because of me." Yates stepped into the room, gently taking the dress from her hands and setting it aside. "Brielle, look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his. "Running isn't the answer," he said. "Not this time." What other choice do I have? She asked, a tear spilling down her cheek. He'll never let me go. Fight, Yates said simply. Stay and fight, not alone with us, with me. Why? She whispered. Why would you risk everything for me? Yates took a deep breath. Because in these past months, you've become important to me, to Emma. This place wasn't truly a home until you came. Yates, she said, her voice trembling, what are you saying? He reached out, hesitantly brushing away the tear on her cheek. I'm saying that I care for you, Brielle, more than I should, perhaps, more than I've cared for anyone in a very long time. Her eyes widened. But my past, the danger I've brought, none of that matters to me, he interrupted. What matters is who you are now, here with us, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Another tear escaped, followed by another. I'm afraid, she admitted, not just of Thomas, but of feeling this way, of letting myself believe I could have this. Have what? He asked softly. A home, she whispered. A family, you. The confession hung between them for a heartbeat before Yates closed the distance, drawing her into his arms. She came willingly, her hands clutching the fabric of his shirt as if afraid he might disappear. I'm not going anywhere, he murmured against her hair, and neither are you if I have any say in the matter. She pulled back slightly to look up at him. But Thomas will have to go through me to get to you, Yates finished, and I'm a lot more stubborn than I look. A watery laugh escaped her. That's saying something. Yates smiled, then grew serious again. Stay, Brielle, please, not just because of Blackburn, but because you want to be here, with Emma, with me. She searched his face, seemed to find what she was looking for. Slowly, she nodded. I do want that, more than anything. Relief and something deeper washed through him. Gently, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was brief but full of promise. When they parted, she looked up at him with wonder in her eyes. I'll stay, she whispered. And we'll face whatever comes together. The next day dawned crisp and clear, a perfect Montana autumn morning. Yates woke early, his mind already turning over plans to better secure the ranch. If Blackburn returned and Yates was certain they needed to be prepared. He found Miguel already awake, checking the corral fence. Good morning, Patron, the ranch hand called. The senorita has decided to stay, yes. Yates couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. News travels fast, Miguel shrugged. Small ranch and I have eyes. He paused his work, growing serious. It is good, she belongs here. I think so too, Yates agreed, but it means trouble is coming. Trouble comes whether we invite it or not, Miguel replied philosophically. Better to face it for something worth fighting for. They spent the morning reinforcing the ranch's defenses, checking rifles, planning sight lines, discussing how to protect Emma if the worst happened. Brielle joined them later, insisting on learning how to use a rifle. I won't be helpless, she said firmly when Yates hesitated. Not again. Recognizing the determination in her eyes, Yates showed her how to load, aim, and fire his Winchester. She was a quick study, her hands steady despite their delicate appearance. You're a natural, he said after she hit the target for the third time in a row. I hope I never have to use this skill, she replied, lowering the rifle. But I feel better knowing I can. Days passed with no sign of Blackburn, and gradually the tension began to ease. Emma's birthday was approaching. She would be 5 years old, and Brielle threw herself into planning a small celebration. She baked a cake, fashioned a doll from scraps of fabric, and decorated the main room with paper chains she and Emma made together. On the morning of Emma's birthday, Yates surprised them both by producing a small wooden rocking horse he'd been carving in secret. Uncle Yates, Emma squealed, throwing her arms around his neck. It's the best present ever, better than Miss Brielle's cake, he teased. Emma considered this seriously. It's a tie, she decided diplomatically, causing both adults to laugh. As they sat down to the birthday dinner Brielle had prepared, Emma suddenly grew quiet, looking from Yates to Brielle with a thoughtful expression. What's on your mind, Squirt? Yates asked. I was just thinking, Emma said slowly. Miss Brielle makes you smile a lot, Uncle Yates, and you make her smile too. Brielle blushed and Yates cleared his throat. Is that right? Emma nodded solemnly. My friend Sarah in town said when grown-ups smile at each other a lot, sometimes they get married. Are you and Miss Brielle going to get married? The directness of the question caught them both off guard. Brielle looked down at her plate, her cheeks flaming while Yates searched for an appropriate response. "Well, Emma," he began carefully, "sometimes grown-ups need time to figure things out, but I will tell you that Miss Brielle is very special to me." "And your uncle is very special to me," Brielle added softly, meeting Yates's eyes across the table. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. "Good, because I want us to be a real family like Sarah has." The simplicity of the child's wish touched them both deeply. After Emma was tucked into bed that night, Brielle and Yates sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. "She sees things clearly, doesn't she?" Brielle said, her voice gentle in the darkness. "Children often do," Yates replied. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Brielle, I know this is all happening fast, and there's still the matter of Blackburn, but I want you to know that what Emma said about us being a family, it's what I want too." Brielle turned to face him, her expression serious in the moonlight. "Are you sure? My past is just that," he interrupted. "The past, I'm interested in our future." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet, but I want you to know that's where my heart is headed." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Mine too," she whispered. "I never thought I could feel this way again, safe, hopeful, low," she caught herself, but Yates heard the unspoken word. "Loved," he finished for her. "Because you are, Brielle, by Emma and by me." She leaned into him then, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her close as the night deepened around them. For that moment, at least, the future seemed full of possibilities. But their peace was shattered 3 days later, when a rider from town brought news that Blackburn had been seen in Silverdale, asking questions about Forrester Ranch. The man had gathered a larger group, 10 men or more, and was making no secret of his intentions to retrieve what he called his property. Sheriff Callahan tried to run him off, the rider, a young man named Jake who worked at the livery stable, told them. But Blackburn just laughed and said he had business to settle that wasn't the law's concern. "When was this?" Yates asked, his face grim. "Yesterday," Jake replied. "Sheriff sent me to warn you they might be heading this way. He's trying to gather some men, but most folks are scared of Blackburn's reputation." Yates nodded. "Thanks for the warning, Jake. You'd best get back to town." After the young man left, Yates, Brielle, and Miguel gathered in the main room to discuss their options. "We could try to reach the marshal in Helena," Miguel suggested. "Federal law might mean more to this Blackburn than a local sheriff." "Helena's 4 days' ride," Yates pointed out. "Blackburn could be here by tomorrow." "What about Emma?" Brielle asked, her face pale with worry. "She can't be here if there's going to be fighting." Yates ran a hand through his hair, thinking. "The Wilson family over in the next valley would take her in. They have daughters about her age." "I'll take her," Miguel offered, "first thing in the morning. The trail through the high pass is too narrow for a large group to follow easily." Yates nodded his agreement. "Good. Brielle, you should go too." "No," she said immediately. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." "Brielle," he began, but she cut him off. "This is my fight too, Yates. More than anyone's, I won't run anymore." He saw the determination in her eyes and knew arguing would be futile. "All right," he conceded. "But at the first sign of real trouble, you go to the root cellar. That's non-negotiable." She agreed, though reluctantly. They spent the rest of the day preparing cleaning weapons, boarding up windows, moving furniture to create barricades. That night, they told Emma she'd be going on a special visit to the Wilson girls. "But tomorrow is school day," Emma protested, confused by the sudden change in plans. "Think of it as a field trip," Brielle suggested, keeping her voice light despite her fear. "You can show Sarah and Mary all the things you've learned." "Will you come visit me?" Emma asked, looking from Brielle to Yates. "As soon as we can, Squirt," Yates promised, pulling her into a tight hug. "You be good for the Wilsons and mind what Miguel tells you. Is something bad going to happen?" Emma asked perceptively. "Is it the man who was looking for Miss Brielle?" Yates and Brielle exchanged a glance. They had agreed not to frighten the child, but neither would they lie to her. "There might be some trouble," Yates admitted, "but you don't need to worry about it. That's grown-up business." Emma frowned. "You'll keep Miss Brielle safe, won't you, Uncle Yates? With everything I have," he promised solemnly. The child seemed satisfied with this answer and allowed Brielle to help her pack a small bag for her stay. Before dawn the next morning, Miguel saddled his most reliable horse, and Yates lifted Emma into the saddle in front of him. "Remember, take the high pass," Yates instructed. "And stay with the Wilsons until one of us comes for you or you get word from Sheriff Callahan." Miguel nodded. "I will guard her with my life, patron. And I'll be very good," Emma added, trying to be brave despite her trembling lip. Brielle stepped forward, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. "We'll see you very soon, sweetheart, and when you come back, we'll have a special treat. Promise?" Emma asked. "Promise," Brielle confirmed. They watched as Miguel and Emma rode away in the gray light of early morning, the child's small figure getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the trees leading to the mountain pass. "She'll be safe," Yates said, as much to reassure himself as Brielle. "Miguel won't let anything happen to her." Brielle nodded, wiping away a tear. "I know, I just hope." She trailed off, unable to voice her fear that they might not see Emma again. Yates pulled her into his arms. "We'll get through this, Brielle, and then we'll build that future we talked about." She clung to him for a moment, drawing strength from his solid presence before straightening her shoulders. "Yes," she said firmly. "We will." They spent the morning making final preparations. Yates showed Brielle the root cellar, a small underground space accessed through a trapdoor in the kitchen floor. It wasn't comfortable, but it was solid and could serve as a last refuge if needed. By midday, they were as ready as they could be. They ate a simple meal together, neither speaking much but drawing comfort from each other's presence. Afterward, Yates insisted Brielle rest while he kept watch. "I'll wake you if there's any sign of them," he promised. She agreed reluctantly, lying down on the sofa while Yates took up position near the window. Despite her anxiety, exhaustion claimed her, and she fell into a light sleep. The sun was low in the sky when Yates gently shook her awake. "Riders coming," he said quietly. "At least a dozen." Brielle sat up immediately, her heart pounding. "Blackburn?" Yates nodded grimly. "In the lead. They're taking their time, still about 2 miles out." She moved to the window, peering out at the approaching riders. Even at this distance, she could make out Thomas's distinctive figure. Fear knotted her stomach, but alongside it was a steely resolve. This would end today, one way or another. "What's the plan?" she asked, moving to retrieve the rifle Yates had given her. "I'll go out to meet them," Yates said. "Try to resolve this without bloodshed if possible." "And if it's not possible," his expression hardened, "then we fight." As the riders drew closer, Yates checked his revolver one last time and strapped it to his hip. "Stay inside," he told Brielle. "Keep the rifle ready, but don't show yourself unless there's no other choice." She nodded, understanding the strategy. Blackburn didn't know for certain she was here. There was a slim chance this could be resolved without her involvement. Yates stepped onto the porch as the riders approached the ranch yard. He stood tall and calm, betraying none of the tension Brielle knew he must be feeling. "That's far enough," he called when they were still 20 yards from the house. The group halted, and Blackburn moved his horse forward a few paces. "Forrester," he acknowledged with cold disdain. "I see you're still harboring what belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you, Blackburn," Yates replied evenly. "And you're trespassing on my land." Blackburn's lips curled into a sneer. "I'll leave once I have what I came for. Send out Brielle and we can avoid making this unpleasant." "There's no Brielle here," Yates lied smoothly. "Just me, and I'm asking you politely to leave." "Do you take me for a fool?" Blackburn demanded, his face flushing with anger. "I know she's here. I have witnesses who have seen her in town." From her position inside, Brielle tensed. She'd only been to Silverdale twice since arriving at the ranch, but apparently that had been enough. "Whatever you think you know," Yates said, "you're mistaken. Now I'll say it one more time, get off my land." Blackburn glanced at the men flanking him, then back at Yates. "Search the house," he ordered. 3 riders dismounted, but Yates drew his revolver with practiced speed, aiming it steadily at Blackburn. "Take one more step and your boss gets a bullet between the eyes." The men froze, looking to Blackburn for direction. The tension in the air was thick, every man poised on the edge of violence. "You're willing to die for a woman who isn't even yours?" Blackburn asked incredulously. "She's not worth it, Forrester. Whatever she's told you about me, about us, it's lies. She's good at that lying, manipulation. It's why she needed discipline." Brielle felt sick at his words, at the casual way he spoke of abusing her, but Yates didn't flinch. "The only liar I see here is you," Yates replied. "A real man doesn't need to discipline women, Blackburn. Only cowards hit those weaker than themselves." Blackburn's face contorted with rage. "You self-righteous bastard. What would you know about being a real man? Playing house with another man's woman, raising another man's brat. That's enough." Yates cut him off, his voice deadly quiet. "You've got 10 seconds to turn around and ride away. After that, what happens is on your head." For a moment, it seemed Blackburn might back down, then his hand moved lightning fast toward his holster. Yates fired first, his bullet striking Blackburn's shoulder, causing him to drop his weapon with a howl of pain. Chaos erupted. Blackburn's men drew their guns, bullets splintering the wood of the porch as Yates dove for cover. From inside, Brielle fired through the window, her shot striking one of the attackers in the leg. "Burn it," Blackburn screamed, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Burn the house down." Two men ran for their saddlebags, presumably to retrieve something flammable. Yates picked one off with a clean shot, but the other made it back to the group, producing a bottle with a rag stuffed in it. "Brielle," Yates shouted, "root cellar now." She hesitated for just a moment, then ran for the kitchen as a flaming bottle crashed through the window, igniting the curtains. Another followed, landing on the rug near the sofa. Smoke filled the room with alarming speed as the dry wood and fabric caught fire. Coughing, Brielle lifted the trapdoor to the root cellar, but before she could descend, she heard Yates cry out in pain. Without thinking, she grabbed the rifle and ran back to the main room. Yates was on the floor near the door, blood staining his shirt just below his collarbone. He was still conscious, trying to raise his revolver as a figure appeared in the doorway. Blackburn, his face twisted with hatred, his own gun pointed at Yates's head. "I'm going to enjoy this," Blackburn snarled. "Then I'll find her in the ashes." "No, you won't," Brielle said, stepping into view with her rifle aimed at Blackburn's chest. "Step away from him, Thomas, now." Blackburn turned, his eyes widening at the sight of her. "Brielle," he said, his tone shifting to one of false concern. "Thank God you're alive. These people have been keeping you against your will, haven't they? Come, we need to get out of here before the fire spreads." She almost laughed at his pathetic attempt to manipulate her. "The only person who ever kept me against my will was you, Thomas. And I'll die before I go anywhere with you again." His face hardened. "That can be arranged," he said, swinging his gun toward her. Brielle fired first, her bullet striking him squarely in the chest. Blackburn's expression froze in shock as he stumbled backward, falling heavily to the floor. Without sparing him another glance, Brielle rushed to Yates's side. "Can you stand?" she asked, helping him to a sitting position. "We need to get out of here." The smoke was thickening, flames licking at the walls and furniture. Yates nodded, gritting his teeth against the pain as Brielle helped him to his feet. Together, they staggered toward the door, stepping over Blackburn's body. Outside, the shooting had stopped. Blackburn's men, seeing their leader fall and the house engulfed in flames, were retreating, helping their wounded onto horses and galloping away. Brielle led Yates to the water trough near the barn, where he sank down, his face pale from blood loss. She tore a strip from her petticoat and pressed it against his wound. "Hold this," she instructed. "I'm going to try to save what I can from the house." "Brielle, no," he began, but she was already running toward the burning building. The front room was an inferno, but the kitchen was still relatively clear of flames. Brielle grabbed the small trunk containing Emma's books and her mother's keepsakes, along with a few essential items, and dragged them outside. She was about to go back for more when a section of the roof collapsed with a thunderous crash. Yates had managed to get to his feet and caught her arm, pulling her away from the house. "Let it go," he said hoarsely. "It's just things. They can be replaced." They stood together, watching as the home Yates had built with his own hands was consumed by fire. Tears streamed down Brielle's face, not just for the material loss but for all that the house represented: the hope of a future, a family, a place to belong. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "This is all my fault." Yates turned her to face him, his expression fierce despite his injury. "No, this was Blackburn's doing, not yours, never yours. A sound behind them made them both turn sharply, Brielle raising the rifle she still carried. But it was Sheriff Callahan, leading a group of men from town. "Looks like we're too late," the sheriff said, surveying the burning house and the bodies on the ground. "Jake told us Blackburn was headed this way. We came as fast as we could." "You're just in time to help with the wounded," Yates replied, swaying slightly on his feet. Brielle caught him before he could fall. "He needs a doctor," she told the sheriff. "Bullet wound to the shoulder." Callahan dismounted, helping her lower Yates to the ground. "Doc Wilson's with us." "Johnson, bring the doctor over here," he called to one of his men. As the doctor tended to Yates, Callahan questioned Brielle about what had happened. She told him everything, from her escape from Blackburn months earlier to the final confrontation. The sheriff listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a small book. "Sounds like clear-cut self-defense to me," he said when she finished. "Blackburn was trespassing, set fire to the house, and threatened both your lives. You won't face any charges, Miss Summers." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, Sheriff, but what about his men? Will they come back?" Callahan shook his head. "I doubt it. Most were just hired guns with no personal stake in this fight. Without Blackburn to pay them, they'll move on." The doctor finished bandaging Yates's shoulder and approached them. "The wound's clean, passed straight through. He's lost blood but should recover fully with rest and care. We need to get him somewhere he can rest," Brielle said, looking anxiously at Yates, who was pale but conscious. "My place in town," Sheriff Callahan offered. "My wife will help look after him until we can arrange something more permanent." Brielle hesitated. "Thank you, but I need to get word to Miguel and Emma first. They're at the Wilson Ranch in the next valley." "I'll send a rider," Callahan promised. "They can meet us in town." With the sheriff's men's help, they managed to get Yates onto a horse, with Brielle riding behind him to keep him steady. The journey to Silverdale was slow and painful, but by nightfall they were settled in the sheriff's home, with Yates resting comfortably in a spare bedroom. Mrs. Callahan, a kind-faced woman with practical hands, helped Brielle clean up and provided her with a change of clothes. "You've had quite an ordeal," she said sympathetically. "The sheriff told me what happened. You showed remarkable courage." Brielle shook her head. "I was just protecting the man I love," she said, the words coming naturally now. "I couldn't let Thomas destroy what we've found together. Mrs." Callahan smiled knowingly. "Well, from what I can see, that young man in there feels the same way about you. Hasn't taken his eyes off you since you arrived, even half dead as he is." A rider returned late that night with news that Miguel and Emma had received the message and would arrive in town the following day. With that worry eased, Brielle finally allowed herself to rest, falling into an exhausted sleep in a chair beside Yates's bed. She woke to find him watching her, his eyes clear despite the pallor of his face. "Morning," he said softly. "How do you feel?" she asked, immediately alert. "Like I've been shot," he replied with a weak smile. "But I'll live. Doc says it missed anything important." Brielle took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I was so afraid I'd lose you. Takes more than a bullet to get rid of me," he assured her. "Besides, I have too much to live for now." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of running feet, and then the door burst open to reveal Emma, her face alight with joy. "Uncle Yates, Miss Brielle," she cried, rushing to the bed. She stopped short when she saw Yates's bandaged shoulder. "Are you hurt bad, Uncle Yates?" "Just a scratch, Squirt," he assured her. "I'll be good as new in no time." Miguel appeared in the doorway, his normally stoic expression softened with relief. "Patron, señorita, it is good to see you both alive." "Thanks to Brielle," Yates said, looking at her with undisguised admiration. "She saved my life." Emma climbed carefully onto the bed, snuggling against Yates's uninjured side. "Where are we going to live now?" she asked, her small face serious. "Miguel says our house is gone." Yates and Brielle exchanged a glance, the question bringing reality crashing back. Their home was gone, the ranch damaged, the future suddenly uncertain. "We'll build a new house," Yates said firmly. "A better one, together." "With a bigger room for me?" Emma asked hopefully. "With a bigger room for you," he confirmed. "And space for anything else we might need in the future." His eyes met Brielle's over Emma's head, and she understood what he was really saying. A future together with room for growth for family. "I'd like that." she said softly. Sheriff Callahan cleared his throat from the doorway. Speaking of the future, he said, I've been talking with the town council. Seems Silverdale's in need of a schoolteacher, what with Mrs. Peterson retiring end of the month. Pays not much, but it comes with living quarters until you can rebuild your ranch. Brielle blinked in surprise. Are you offering me a position, Sheriff, if you want it, he replied. Heard from young Emma here that you were a teacher back east. Seems a shame to waste those skills. A teacher again. The thought filled Brielle with unexpected joy. I would be honored, she said. Thank you. Don't thank me, Callahan said with a smile. Thank your young lady here, he nodded at Emma. She talked up your teaching skills something fierce when she arrived with Miguel, got the whole town council interested. Emma beamed proudly. I told them how you taught me fractions and precedents and everything. Yates laughed, then winced as the movement jarred his shoulder. Looks like you've got yourself a job, Miss Summers, and we've got a temporary home. A new beginning, Brielle said, feeling hope blossom in her heart despite all they had lost. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Yates recovered from his wound more quickly than the doctor had predicted, his determination to rebuild driving him to push through the pain. The town rallied around them, offering materials, labor, and support. The schoolteachers' quarters, a small but comfortable apartment attached to the schoolhouse, became their temporary home while plans were made for rebuilding the ranch. Brielle took to teaching with renewed passion, discovering that she loved working with the children of Silverdale. Emma attended her class, proudly introducing my Miss Brielle to the other students. In the evenings, Yates would often sit in the back of the classroom, watching Brielle work with a few older students who stayed late for extra help. The way she patiently explained difficult concepts, her face lighting up when a student grasped a new idea, filled him with a quiet joy. One evening, as they walked back to their quarters after school, Yates took her hand. I've been thinking, he said. A dangerous pastime, she teased, swinging their joined hands between them. I'm serious, he said, though he was smiling, about the future, our future. Brielle's heart quickened. What about it? He stopped walking, turning to face her. I know we plan to rebuild the ranch, and we still can, but seeing you in that classroom, Brielle, you're meant to be a teacher. I don't want to take that away from you. What are you suggesting? She asked, searching his face. We could build here in town. I could run cattle from here just as well, be closer to the market. Emma would have other children nearby, a proper school. He took a deep breath. And you could keep teaching. Brielle was touched by his thoughtfulness. You'd change your plans for me. I'd change a lot more than that for you, he said softly. The ranch isn't what makes a home, Brielle. It's the people in it. You and Emma, you're my home now, wherever we are. Tears welled in her eyes. I love you, Yates Forrester. And I love you, Brielle Summers. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box, which is why I'm asking you to marry me. He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring, a small diamond set in gold. Brielle gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. It was my mother's, Yates explained. I had it in the trunk with Emma's books, the one you saved from the fire. Seems fitting it should be yours now. Yes, Brielle whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a gentle kiss that held all the promise of their future together. Their wedding took place a month later in the small church in Silverdale. Emma served as flower girl, beaming with pride as she scattered petals down the aisle. Miguel stood as Yates's best man, his normally serious face split by a wide grin. The entire town turned out for the celebration, which spilled from the church into the town square, where tables groaned under the weight of food contributed by well-wishers. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Yates found Brielle sitting with Emma at one of the tables, the child's head drooping sleepily against her new mother's shoulder. Mrs. Forrester, Yates said, still savoring the sound of her new name. May I have this dance? Brielle smiled up at him, her eyes shining with happiness. Always, she replied, carefully transferring the dozing Emma to Miguel's capable arms before joining her husband in the center of the square. As they swayed together to the music of a fiddle and harmonica, Yates pulled her close. Happy, he murmured against her hair. More than I ever dreamed possible, she answered truthfully. And you, he looked down at her, his eyes full of love. I have everything I need right here. You, Emma, a future to build together. Speaking of Emma, Brielle said, a secretive smile playing at her lips. She asked me something interesting this morning. Oh, Yates raised an eyebrow. What's that? She wanted to know if we could give her a baby brother or sister soon. Yates missed a step, then laughed. Did she now, and what did you tell her? Brielle's smile deepened. I told her that it might happen sooner than she thinks. It took him a moment to understand her meaning. When he did, his eyes widened. Are you saying? She nodded, happiness bubbling up inside her. Dr. Wilson confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a baby, Yates. Joy like he'd never known washed over him. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, oblivious to the cheers and good-natured whistles from the wedding guests. I love you, he whispered against her lips. Both of you. 6 months later, their new home was complete, a handsome 2-story house on the edge of town, with a large classroom on the first floor where Brielle could teach during the winter months when travel to the schoolhouse might be difficult. Yates had purchased land adjoining the town for his cattle, and with Miguel's help and the addition of 2 more ranch hands, the Forrester herd was growing once again. Emma had her bigger room, decorated with pictures she'd drawn and books she was learning to read on her own. And the room next to it waited, painted a soft yellow, for the baby due in just 3 more months. On a crisp autumn evening, Yates sat on the porch of their new home, watching as Brielle moved about the garden, her rounded belly preceding her as she gathered the last of the season's vegetables. Emma crouched beside her, carefully placing each item in the basket, chattering away about her day at school. The peace of the moment washed over him, a contentment he'd never thought possible after the tragedies of his earlier life. From the ashes of the past, they had built something beautiful, a family, a home, a future full of promise. Brielle looked up, catching him watching them. She smiled that smile that still made his heart skip a beat, then whispered something to Emma. The little girl nodded eagerly, picking up the basket and carrying it carefully toward the house. Uncle Yates, Emma called as she climbed the porch steps. Miss Brielle says to tell you supper's almost ready and she needs your help with something important. Is that so? Yates asked, taking the heavy basket from her small hands. What important thing does she need help with? Emma giggled, her eyes dancing with mischief. She says you need to help pick a name for the baby. I think we should call him Alexander if he's a boy, after the book you're reading me about the great conqueror. Yates laughed, ruffling her hair. Alexander, huh? That's a mighty big name for a little baby. Well, he won't be little forever, Emma reasoned with impeccable child logic. He'll grow into it. That he will, Yates agreed, watching as Brielle made her way toward them, one hand supporting her back, the other resting protectively on her belly. The sight of her, glowing with life and love, still took his breath away. Emma ran back down the steps to help Brielle, taking her hand and guiding her carefully as if she were made of glass. The child had taken to her role as protective big sister with serious dedication. Alexander Forrester, Brielle mused as she joined Yates on the porch. It has a nice ring to it, don't you think? It does, Yates agreed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Though I still think Claire would be perfect for a girl after her grandmother. Brielle leaned into his embrace. Claire Alexander Forrester, then, if it's a girl. Deal, Yates said, sealing it with a kiss to her temple. Emma tugged at their hands. Can we have supper now? I'm starving. Go wash up first, Brielle instructed with a laugh. Then we'll eat. As Emma dashed inside, Brielle turned in Yates's arms to face him. Happy? She asked, echoing his question from their wedding day. He looked at this woman who had brought such unexpected joy into his life, at the home they'd built together, at the future spreading out before them bright with promise despite the hardships they'd overcome. More than words can say, he answered honestly. She stood on tiptoes to kiss him softly. Remember what Emma asked that first night I arrived, if I could stay forever, and I said I sure hoped so, Yates recalled, smiling at the memory. Brielle placed his hand on her belly, where their child kicked vigorously against his palm. Well, Mr. Forrester, she said, her eyes shining with love and certainty, it seems like forever is just getting started.